here today with Andrew Martin. He is a highly attuned energy intuitive and personal transformation guide. And you can find more about his work at andrewmartin.energy, as well as check out his YouTube channel under the same thing, Andrew Martin Energy. So, hi, Andrew. Welcome back.
Hi, friend. So happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you here, too. As you know, you participated a few weeks ago. I did this crow meditation. I've been diving deep into shadow work and this idea of judgment. And oftentimes, what we judge in others is just a reflection of our own stuff. And this made me think more about the idea of good and evil, or good and bad, and these two kind of polarized, I think, reflections, these two ideas that I think lead to the judgment, especially in ourselves, because those ideas of good and evil or good and bad become part of our cultural mores and expectations, and just even things like if we wouldn't decide that something, if we wouldn't give that something a value judgment as good or bad, there would be far less judgment in our lives. So I want to start, how do you approach the subject? Is there, do you buy into this idea that there are good people and there are evil people?
No, I buy into the idea that there are people who are creating out of love, and there are people who are doing everything they can to create in the absence of love or at the exclusion of love. And whether that's a conscious choice that you say, I'm never going to love again, or whether you're raised in a household where you just never know love, so you have no model for it and no understanding really of what it means. But no, this idea of evil, I believe, has been packaged and sold predominantly by organized religion.
Yes. A few weeks ago, I had Nick Jarowski on, and he did this whole, well, he eventually will be 6 podcast series on shame. And this was something that he had brought up, is that there's so many things that people feel shame about, or use shaming as a technique to control behavior. But what we really need to look is underneath that. And this is kind of what I was trying to get at, is that because of that idea of good and evil, there's so much more opportunity for judgment. I know for myself, because I grew up in a really strong religious family, that idea of, if you don't live according to these rules, then essentially you're going to hell. So how
Yes.
did you also have that as a construct in your upbringing?
A little bit. It wasn't necessarily from religion specifically. It was more because growing up as a gay kid who wasn't out for, I came out when I was 18. So for the first 18 years, I mean, I knew I was gay at 5. So growing up in the 80s and the 70s and the 80s in a small town in rural Wyoming, my concept of good and evil or shame and I've done something bad was just because I was gay. And so it certainly was something that was informed by the church. The town I grew up in is heavily Mormon, a big Mormon population, and a lot of good Christian folks. So I was surrounded by these voices culturally, just in my community, but also then on the, sort of the national global stage at large, that gay was bad and it was an awful thing. And then, of course, it was always supported by this, with Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Or whatever stupid rhetoric they were using. And I always thought, yeah, well, it's homosexual, or it's homo sapien, not heterosapien. Anyway, that was my, my 12-year-old retort. But no, I think for me, that concept of shame and good or bad more was centered around my sexual identity, but certainly I thought I was going to hell. I certainly, I guess the end result was the same. I felt that I was bad and wrong and that I was going to be punished for it.
So how did you work through that idea? Like, how did you deal with your shame, or this idea that who you are was nothing, didn't need to be seen in the light of good or bad?
I think that there was an innate understanding that if God is love, then why is there hell? Because you can't be love and then also condemn people. Like, how is that loving to condemn people to fire and brimstone for all eternity? So for me, it was just as simple as that. I just never saw how those two concepts lined up. And then also in the, how many like big name preachers were, scandals and all, so all of this stuff was easy for me to poke through. However, that was really, really powerfully overshadowed just by the cultural conditioning. So it was not really, I'm 49, it was not until my 40s that I was able to really dismantle that shame.
Wow, you look fantastic, Mr. 49-year-old.
Just don't look at my neck. I need to figure out how to get this accordion thing from happening. But yeah, so for me, maybe if we just put the camera up here and I can just look up. Yeah, so for me, that thread of shame was really, really deeply ingrained into my fabric. So it took a while.
So when you work with clients, how do you, because clearly I think we've all done things that are out of alignment with who we want to be.
Yeah.
Like I can name you a bajillion things in my 20s that were clearly out of alignment with who I wanted to be. And so how do you talk about that? If not in terms of like good and bad, how do you explore that subject so it doesn't induce shame? It's
Well,
not
I think the
about shame or
first
judgment.
Right. And I think that that's a tricky one to walk because when you're coming from the belief set that I have, which is that you are the creator of everything you've experienced and everything you have experienced was a choice at some level, it's really hard to accept that when you are not in a state of understanding of what that really means. So it can, I think the first thing for me that I like to establish with my clients is that shame can only exist when you are using someone else's guidelines to measure your behavior. Without the judgments of another, shame doesn't exist because I'm just doing what I'm guided to do. So without someone else out there telling me you did a bad thing, how am I going to feel shame?
So you don't think there's aspect or occasions where you feel shame because you know that you lived outside of, if that your actions were incongruent with who you choose to be?
Yes, but to me, that is not shame. That is the
Ah.
pain of denying the self. And so for me, that distinction is crucial because one comes from the self. One is you at that higher level telling yourself, Angela, what you're doing right now is not who you are, or what you're believing and the beliefs that you have that are inspiring or informing this behavior, those beliefs aren't you, right? So that to me is free from judgment. It's simply stating the fact, Angela, the things that you just did are causing pain because you're choosing to believe something about yourself that isn't true, which, by the way, is where the pain of shame comes from. Because if I believe that you're right and I'm wrong, that's the pain because I'm believing a truth that is not mine. So for me, it's establishing first and foremost that any pain that you feel, period, is because of a disconnect between who you perceive yourself to be and who you really are. So whether that's physical, emotional, psychic, whatever version of pain, all pain, I believe, stems from that incongruency in belief.
It's really interesting to me. I've always thought that yes, you could feel a sense of shame. Like obviously other people can make you feel shame. And like you said, lots of organized religions are set up, to say if you fall short on these guidelines or these rules, then you should feel shame and perhaps we should shame you. But I've never thought that shame had to have a witness or an outside observer, that feeling that you have when you live outside, you're living outside of your own set of values, worldview, et cetera, or who you want to be in this world. To me, I always describe that as shame, but it's interesting that you wouldn't, that shame requires an outside observer.
I believe it does, yes. And for me, that's how I choose to couch it in my own experience because the pain that I feel when I'm doing something that is against who I know myself to be is not shame. It's like, oh God, why did I do that? Oh, I'm like, maybe I'm feeling a little embarrassed. Maybe I'm feeling a little sheepish. Maybe I'm feeling a little regretful. But shame, no. Why should I be ashamed that I chose what I chose. Why? There's absolutely no cause for me to be ashamed of having chosen that. Now, certainly there is some accountability that is required for the negativity that I created within myself. Like, I have to be the one to unravel that and sit with myself and go, yeah, Andrew, you knew better, but you did it anyway. Okay. Push the reset button, start again. But shame is, because you did this, there's a finite, what's the word I'm looking for? There's an absolute consequence of what you did, and it is going to be punishment, pain, suffering, that to me does not occur within an authentic spiritual experience.
Interesting. This is a bit of an aside, but I've always wanted to flesh this out with somebody. You and I are very interested in personal growth, and we talk a lot about, personal responsibility and be accountable for our actions. So in this kind of area that we're talking about, how do you guide your clients to love where they're at and still appreciate that there's growth? Because I think that that's an interesting hiccup that we run into, is that often, we talk about self-acceptance and self-love, and yet there's still places where we are out of alignment or incongruent. And so often people in their minds will be like, well, as soon as I'm, lose those 20 pounds, then I can love myself. Or as soon as I get that promotion, or as soon as whatever it is, there's something out there that then that idea of I can accept who I am is more palatable. But then there's something tricky there in being able to say, no, you need to accept who you are and love who you are, and yet recognize that perhaps there's places where there's work to be done. How do you navigate those waters?
Gosh, that's such a good question. I mean, that could be a whole conversation in and of itself. To me, I think it's important to acknowledge that love and acceptance don't always come at the same time. Sometimes love comes later when you've just accepted it, right? It's like when I had my house cleaning business. The only way I'm ever going to clean up the mess is by accepting the mess as it is first. I don't have to love it. And trust me when I tell you some of the horrifying things that I saw when I was cleaning people's homes. I didn't love it, but I accepted it. I accepted that it was something that needed to be dealt with. And then love is something that perhaps you learn, right? It's something you nurture. There's another piece to this here, is that oftentimes people are being asked to love themselves when they have no model for what love is. So I'm essentially sending you to the store to buy a chocolate cake when you've never seen one before. You're going to bring me broccoli, ground beef, toilet wipes, and a plunger, but I still don't have any chocolate cake. So how on earth can I expect you to provide something for yourself that you have no model for? So what I always begin with is just acceptance. The only two things that I believe are required for your journey, at least initially, are curiosity and willingness. You don't have to like it. You don't have to be happy about it. You don't have to fake it. I don't expect you to put on a fake smile and put it on your vision board. I'm in the vortex. No, if you're unhappy, be unhappy. Spirit doesn't care. All Spirit cares is that you're present and that you're willing. So for me, I think it just begins with acceptance, and then love comes later. You learn how to nurture love. You learn how to cultivate love. And if you grew up 20 pounds overweight and the whole time you were growing up, you heard nothing but bad, negative, horrible, awful things about that, you have no model for what it is to love yourself at 20 pounds overweight. So just start with accepting.
I like that. It's funny. I also cleaned houses.
Did you?
Yes, I did. And I was going to actually, as we transition to karma, because I think it's all sort of related. My boss that I cleaned houses with, we would drive around from house to house, and she would say, she had this saying about karma. She's like, it's the karma credit plan. You can pay now or you can pay later, but you're gonna pay. She always used to say
I love how so many of us turn karma into this wrathful vengeance thing that, is like you're struck down by the fury of the gods. It's hilarious to me.
When we talk about acceptance, when we talk about shame and self-judgment or judgments of others, I think that there is this idea of karma underneath this, that somehow we deserve the place that that we're in, or if we don't do the right things, there's going to be this retribution. There's going to be, this going back to religion and this idea of good and evil, reward, punishment, those kind of things. So I want to first start. How would you describe what karma is?
What I believe karma is just you are receiving what you're putting out. That's it. And I also believe that karma is something specific to the third dimensional earth experience, specifically to humans. I do not believe that karma is a universal law. I believe that cause and effect is a universal law, but I do not believe that karma is. I believe karma was a mechanism for the experiment that we have been going through the past 27,000 something years, but I don't believe it's an absolute law.
Okay, I would agree with that. And so I want to share a bit of a story. So I was rereading Seed of the Soul, Gary Zukov.
I love that book.
He has a whole chapter on karma, and I'm reading it and I'm like, something's just not sitting right. So I get out my journal and I start like writing about this idea that karma is actually, at this time, I thought karma is actually about the stories that linger, like the energetic debris that lingers in our field. And so I started having this download, and we had to go out. We had plans. And so I leave, and then I come home later, and my philosophy book is sitting in the middle of my bed. Big ass textbook in the middle of my bed. I'm like, what is that doing here? Like,
someone wants you to read something.
Yeah. So I'm like, but it's like a big book. So I'm like, okay, clearly something needs my attention here. So then later, the next day I'm in the bath, and all of a sudden a page number drops in. It's like, okay. So I go to that page, and it just provides, it's actually about Plato and his theories of form and his idea of being and becoming and all of this stuff. And so all of a sudden this idea of karma starts to come into fuller and fuller vision. So what I've always, I think on the most basic level, what people get wrong when they talk about karma is this idea that it's like, like karma's a bitch, or
the karma truck's coming around the corner, better get out of the way.
Yeah, that the universe somehow is deeming our, like St. Michael at the pearly gates, like deeming this was good, this was bad, you should be rewarded for this event, you should be taken out for that event. And honestly, like if you look at some of the way that organized religions talk about, specifically Hinduism, I was in preparing for this, I was listening to a guru, and he was saying that the law of karma is the only way that you can settle this idea of why things are so unequal. So people basically live in the slums he was from Bangalore, because of their karma. And that didn't feel good to me.
No, they chose that.
So I was like, okay, so that doesn't work. So then if you look from Buddhism, which they also talk about karma, and I think they're a little bit more in alignment with what I see, that this idea that we have, like what you were talking about, the intention and where our deeds, like the seeds that we reap what we sow kind of situation. And so that I kind of feel, but so this is what I did a little bit of. So karma, the word actually means deed or action. And I think what we get confused is we mistake the result as what karma is, but karma is actually the action itself. So it has nothing to do with past or future. It's the value of your present moment, what you're living and doing in the here and now. That's karma. So karma is the action, not the result. Our actions have results, but it is the deed and the intention of that deed where like attracts like. So I think that that's a really important thing, that when we talk about it, again, it's not a value judgment of good or bad or right or wrong. It's liking attracts like. So what that idea of what we're putting out returns to us is because of that mechanism that like attracts like. So the more actions we can take without, and so another idea is looking into this, there is a karma yoga. And so karma yoga is to act without the attachment to the fruit of one's actions. So there is a cause and effect relationship because we act from constructs, we act from attachment, we act from story, but karma is only the action itself. And all of that other stuff is more, it's the byproduct of that action. So it's a really like, it's not the universe dictating what's good or bad or right or wrong. It's just a function of us living in this really emergent, co-creative, self-organizing universe. And so we go out there and we create actions, and because of our actions, like attracts like. Okay,
Yeah.
I have a lot more, but I'm going to let you respond.
Okay, the first thing is I want that yogi to believe that people are in the slums because of their karma. I want him to go do yoga in high, like rush hour traffic. And if you don't die, then it's because you have good karma. That's what real karma yoga should be. Anyway, okay, so to me, and I love your definition that you just shared, because to me that says karma is essentially instant manifestation. It's essentially you're instantly getting what you have just created through the choice. And it's what I know to be true. It is not the choice that is important. It is what you believe about yourself as you are making the choice that is more important. Because, for an example, if I think that I'm worthless, unlovable, and hideous, and that I'm never going to be loved, every single choice that I make will illustrate that. I could have the man of my dreams sitting next to me telling me he loves me and wants nothing more than to marry me, and I would not believe it, because the belief that I hold up as true is that I'm worthless and unlovable. To me, that is the foundation for that idea of karma, is that it's whatever you believe about yourself will inspire your choices and actions, and those choices and actions will always bring you back to that belief. I.e., you cannot listen to the rock and roll station if you want to hear jazz. You cannot listen to the I am worthless station if you want to feel love. Because you just, one excludes the other. It's that same thing. If you have no model for what love feels like, looks like, acts like, you will never recognize it. How could you? So to say that because someone, something horrible happened to them because of their relationship and that was karma striking them down, no, the universe, nothing ever comes outside of you. Nothing is ever from outside of you. So why would this one law, karma, be the exception in the entire universe? No,
Yeah.
I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either.
I don't buy it. It's the same idea as the church telling you that you are born broken and worthless and a sinner, and the only way you're ever going to change that is by going to church every single day, giving 10% of everything you ever earn, and begging and pleading for forgiveness every single day of your life. No, I don't buy it. That to me is not a healer, that's a dealer. If I'm telling you that I'm the only way that you can access salvation, I'm not healing, I'm dealing.
Yeah, I agree. I have an issue with that. I have kind of issues with gurus in general.
Me too.
But I wanted to read, going back to karma, we can have a I'm Not Your Guru podcast some other day.
Tony Robbins already did that. That was his
I know.
his documentary.
Yes, exactly. I'm not your guru, but listen to me like I am. Anyway.
Right. No, you're not my guru. You really are not, Mr. Robbins. You got that one correct.
So this man, Paramahamsa Tawari, and I think he's a physicist. So, and again, there's a piece of truth that resonates here for me, but there's something a little bit off. So he has this really interesting quote. He says, the principle of karma, notice principle, not law, of karma requires that the experience of the individual being based on his actions during the lifetime are imprinted in the subtle body, which will therefore have to possess some organized structure of fine matter as mental state within it, and will accordingly be impelled to move to specific locations for rebirth. The principle of karma is fundamentally based on this very concept that deeds of today shape the future events for man. The most intelligent of beings is gifted with the discriminating ability in addition to the instinctive habits that all other creatures possess. So again, I like that idea. Like, I do think that there's a piece of this, of karma, that does form as sort of energetic debris in our field. And then again, that idea of like attracts like, and we pull these things, but I really do think that the karma is the action. So, so our actions have results, but it is the deed and the intention of that a deed that likes attracts like. The more actions we take without being attached to the fruit, that is to say, being in the now moment, the less we become subject to these constructs, stories, mental debris, the less we're going to attract undesired effects. So it isn't a system of reward and punishment. We are part of a system that that is complex, self-organized, and emergent. And we are part of a system that influences each other. So our karma acts and feeds into the system, and there's feedback basically from that.
Yeah. And there's something there that I'm that is starting to kind of emerge. And I like this idea that karma is almost like another level of self-regulation, in that, let's say, because here's what I believe: we are born into any incarnation for basically two reasons: to remember and to release all that we are not through the experience of living in remembrance, right? So in a sense, I like the idea that karma is sort of like, it's like your deck of cards, and you keep pulling from the same deck from your cards. And then at a certain point you go, wait a minute, why do I always have money issues? Or why do I always have love issues? So you stop looking out here for those answers, and you go inside and you go, oh, I see. It's because when I was 7, my Aunt Judy said, men are suckers, love is, men are dogs, love is for suckers. And I believed her.
Oh, Judy.
So no wonder I have never been able to find love, right? So I like this idea that karma is a way for the soul to regulate its own growth. And that if you continue to have the same experience, that as you have an understanding of how things operate, you cease looking out here and you go in here, and then you begin to get right with yourself. Because that, to me, also illustrates the idea that karma is something that is well within your ability to control, negate, release, neutralize, whatever. And that I can get on board with, because that to me points you back to yourself. And the thing that I am always wary of is any law or rule or system that points you to another source. Because if the healer or the holy man or the medicine woman is not pointing you back to yourself as the beginning and the ending of all of it, there's something wrong.
Yes.
And I would not go to see them again.
Yeah. Yes.
So in that sense, I can get on board with karma.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
I like that idea as well. Yeah. So I have a quote here too by Deepak Chopra, and he says, it says, memory or karma, memory, and desire are just the software of the soul. It's conditioning that the soul undergoes in order to create an experience. It is a cycle. In most people, the cycle is a conditioned response. They do the same thing over and over. But I think that, yes, when people would come and see me when I would do readings for them, and they would like, tell me the future. And I said, the only way that I know your future is because you do the same things over and over again because of your habits. It's not because, so that's, the future is not written. There's many possibilities. And if we can discern your trajectory, it's just because you're basing most of your decisions on unconscious programming.
Yeah. And to me, that is the golden ticket to spiritual awakening, right? Is when you begin to ask the questions of, when did I decide that this was true? When did I decide that this was the way I wanted to live my life? And most of us most of us never made those choices consciously. We just inherited whatever we were programmed to believe.
Yes. And another thing that I've always taken issue with, and this is similar to the idea that, growing up, you tell me that God is all loving, and yet if you don't follow his rules, then you go to hell. Like, that didn't make sense. One of the things that doesn't make sense about karma either is that we can carry so much. So we incarnate in this lifetime without having memory of previous lifetimes, and yet we're damned to continue living that same, it's like, that doesn't make sense to me. Why would it be set up that way to, like, have you, already in a down position on coming in.
Yeah, to me, that's the same concept as the Christian church telling you you're born a sinner. I believe the opposite. I believe that we are the most ourselves up until about age 5 to 7. I believe that's when we begin to divide amongst ourselves. I believe that from birth until like 5, we are the most ourselves that we really have ever been, you know? And I think that we, post awakening, spend the rest of our life trying to get back to that initial state.
Yes.
And so, why would I want to recall a state where I was born broken? And, why would the soul innately be drawn towards that? I don't buy it.
I don't
And
either.
I don't think the soul would go, oh, yeah, I would love to be stuck in a never ending loop for the next 10,000 years. Sure. No, I would not like that, actually. Thank you very much. And I don't believe that it's a requirement for your evolution. And maybe it is, I think it's sort of like the rules and regulations. You have to, like, when you come to Earth, you have to accept that there's gravity, right? There are certain things that are part of our experience as humans on this planet that we just accept. And maybe karma has a place in there somewhere, but I don't believe that it's this oppressive meeting out of reward and punishment.
Yes. Well, interesting. So going back to finding my philosophy book in Plato, so the passage that I was asked to see was about that he actually has this in one of his dialogues. He talks about we're not here to learn, we're here to remember. And that's different. And so you talking about how we are most ourselves between 5 and 7, that's when we really start to glom onto our parents' value systems and the worldview and all these constructs. And that's why I think that this idea of karma, or the results that we have been calling karma, has more to do with the stuff that we all the overlays and the constructs and all the stories and all of that stuff that we pull into our experience. And then from there, that's where that learning comes in, is because we're pulling things towards us that are attracted to all of that energetic debris.
Yeah. It's like a dust bunny, right? That one little, blob of dust under the bed is just going to keep gathering more and more and more. And I also think that, just like a dust bunny, it's not as solid or as absolute as you would think that it is. And I think that's the trick is, and to me, maybe that is why we allowed this idea of karma to run amok and sort of get skewed, is because we wanted the challenge of remembrance in the face of something like karma. Because I think all it takes to poke holes in those paper tigers is just the remembrance of who and what you really are and the ownership of that. And that immediately negates any silly thing like karma. Because when I remember that I am the master creator and that the thread of God runs through me, karma, okay, whatever. My karma ran over my dogma. Big deal. I'm not interested in these oppressive systems. I just have no time for it.
Yeah, it does feel that is incredibly oppressive, to think that you came in and you have to work out all your karma before you can actually, progress as a spiritual being. But I didn't have say in that. And then the one last thing that drives me crazy is the way we talk about karma. Like, there's a possibility that we have made every decision. Like, have you ever had that experience where, say, you trip a little bit on the sidewalk, but you catch yourself before flying on your face, and you're like, in some universe, I did a face plant.
I fell, yeah.
And so I think, like, if we potentially are living out every possibility in these parallel universes, it even doesn't make sense with our idea of time, that our time is more concurrent than it is stretched out into this long linear path. So this idea that we've created all these things that then, follow this linear path to the next, whether it's a parallel lifetime or past lifetime, or however you want to view that, it doesn't really make sense either, because I don't think that when we move outside of this, that I think things are non-local. I don't think that they follow this linear path. So to say that, okay, well, we did, this in this lifetime, and then we carry that to the next lifetime, and then we carry this, that doesn't make sense to me either.
No. And that's why and that to me sort of comes back to what we were initially talking. And I agree, to me, it feels like the concept of linear time, we are given as sort of training wheels so that we can have a more linear, concrete experience as a human. And it also builds in a buffer, right? Thank God I did not have my instant manifestation abilities 5 years ago, because I would have created some really horrible, awful things. So we're given that buffer of linear time to sort of give us that time to go, oh, wait, reset. Oh, no, wait, I changed my mind. So maybe karma is, I believe that karma is sort of one of those parallel constructs that while we are in this 3D human earth experience, while we are in the density of a physical body and participating in the human drama, we need these sort of laws in place because that's part of the experiment, right? It's like the conditions you would have in a double-blind study, right? This thing gets this and this thing gets this, and everything is subject to the same rules and regulations. So maybe it's the same thing, right? We know that, yep, these are the laws on Earth. There's linear time, there's gravity, and there's karma. This is just part of how it is, right? It's like the local customs. And so you agree to play by these rules, but I agree with you. The minute that you're out of that zone and you're no longer a part of that constructed reality, because here's the other thing. And this goes back to that Freddie Silva, Drimbalo Melchizedek material, talking about the void and the illusion. And there are many cultures who believe the only thing that is real is the void. And that everything else is the illusion.
Ooh.
So according to that law, karma is part of the illusion. Because there's no karma in the void.
Yes. And that's another thing that I'm like, we're just poking holes in this whole, this whole thing. We might be, yeah, destroying two religions while we.
Hey, you know, there are worse things that could happen.
Well, before we wrap it up here, I quickly want to talk about your upcoming class, energy field mapping, because
Yes.
I'm really excited about this. And so talk about it, tell us what it is. And
So
yeah.
briefly, I will share, and you've seen this before. This is the outcome of this process, energy field mapping. And my whole life, I have doodled and I have drawn. I've sketched and and I just thought it was, I'm a creative person. I have lots of nervous energy. I'm just doing that. What I realize now is that it was that, and really primarily it was me communicating to myself. That was just the way we were keeping the connections hot until such time as I was conscious and aware of what was really happening. So what I have found is that over the years, the doodling and drawing has grown, it has evolved, it has expanded. And I've started to see that there's much more to it than just doodling and drawing. So recently, what has become shown to me and revealed to me that essentially energy field mapping, and we're going to go through all of this in the course, there are some geometries and some activations that I came in with pre-installed and flipped on that give me the ability to communicate with myself in this way. This is something that anybody can do. All we need to do is go in and turn on some of the switches and download some of the geometry into your field, which we will be doing in this workshop. So essentially what I know this to be, here's another one that I just finished.
Oh, I love that one.
This one's mapping the masculine. The first one that I showed was mapping the feminine. And what I know is that these are actual snapshots of my energy field. And my energy field is using this process to communicate to my conscious mind what the energy field looks like now. So essentially, this is the divine self downloading into the conscious mind the new sort of operating system. And so what this becomes now is just a way to divine and heal within yourself, because this is the other piece. And I am nerding out on this, Angela. Like, I can't even tell you. I am so excited because, and I've been sharing these with you and Lisa, and I've been posting them on the Chaos and Light forum too. Just posting the photographs of the images, and you both are like, oh my God, this is working with my energy field like big time. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I've never experienced anyone sharing that with me before. So I started to become curious about why that was happening. What I know is happening while I am drawing this, I am self-healing. Talking about those narratives and those beliefs that are sticky and still kind of in there, this unravels them. Because what you are doing is you are showing to the mind, this is the truth, and nowhere in here are any erroneous beliefs. So you're essentially downloading new software into your hard drive, and you are overwriting those old files of dysfunction, of disease, of unhappiness, of imbalance, of whatever, while you're doing it. And the most amazing thing happens while I'm doing this process, and my body tells me when it's time to stop. because at a certain point, I will become incredibly tired. Like, and it won't be because I'm tired or I didn't have a good sleep. Like I can be on top of the world, a gallon of coffee, drawing, doing my thing, and then all of a sudden the body's like, okay, that's enough. We need to absorb and organize, and I will go boom, and I will be out for like 10, 20 minutes. I'll wake up and I'll start doing it again, and then I'll get really tired and I'll go out. It's the craziest thing, but you're essentially rewriting the code for your hard drive.
I know exactly that experience. Anytime that I've been doing some sort of rewiring, or, when, did you ever play video games like role player games? And
Yeah.
Angela Levesque has gained a level. And
It's exactly that.
I will have those moments where it's like, yeah, my system is just like, nope, you're out. Boom.
Yep.
Go sleep and then wake up. And it's almost like, yeah, you just had a system reboot. Things had to like wire while you're out, and then you're back up.
So in this workshop, what we're going to do, and there's a supplies list, and people can find it. It's on the Chaos and Light calendar. So there is a supplies list. We are going to be doing hands-on drawing. It's nothing exhaustive. It's something to write with. One color is all you need. Something to make straight lines with, something to make curved lines with, and something to write on. So that's all you need. And you don't have to buy anything. You could use the bottom of this to make a curved line. You could use the edge of your phone to make a straight line. So you don't have to spend any money. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through, well, you have to spend money to sign up, but that's it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the activation. It's some mudras. It's a lot of breathing. It's a lot of connections and geometry going through different parts of the body. Then once we have the connections and the geometries online, then we're going to create the feminine field. We're going to create the masculine field, and then everyone will go along their merry way and begin art journaling and energy field mapping and healing themselves.
That sounds awesome.
I can't wait. I'm so freaking excited. And just as an aside, like this is the stuff for those people who have been following my messages for a while. Last year, November of 2019, I believe it was, I had another depth of awakening occur. And I essentially kind of made this request. And I said, look, this is where I am. I'm going to stick with it. But what I want like the real source material. I don't want the corrupted stuff. Like I want direct from source, the secrets and the keys to this evolutionary journey that we're on. And then came Osiris, and then came the return of the lighted ones post this request, this command really. And now this is, and then in my last message that I shared, the endings and beginnings, and Osiris alluded to the fact that, the stuff that we're sharing now is just going to require a different method. It can't be done via video. This is the stuff they were talking about. Like I have never facilitated anything like this. Like we're activating geometry in the body and we're turning on minor energy centers. This stuff is freaking lighting me up. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too.
So yes, March 14th, Sunday.
All right. That sounds wonderful. I will have to do it. I have a date with my husband. We are going to do it after watching the video because it's at 1 to 3:30 a.m. here in Japan. So
I mean, Angela, come on. I don't know. What sort of karmic retribution are you setting up by not showing up at 1 a.m., Angela?
Oh, too much. Okay. Well, as always, that was amazing. I want to thank you so much. And
it's a pleasure. I love our chats.
What's spinning in our brains next time we meet? Who knows?
Yeah, and the next time we meet, everyone's going to be on board, part of the Chaos and Light community. There's that big announcement coming in the next couple of days, like lots of exciting things happening.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Happy to be here.
Yes. Well, that's the episode here for today. Yeah, if you haven't checked out chaosandlight.com, please do. We got a lot of cool events coming up and more podcasts coming out every week. Well, that's it. Take care and seek the mystery.